You know, a lot of these summits are like going to a closing on your house. Everything's there. Your lawyer's there. The other person's lawyer there. Lots of lawyers there. Paperwork, sign here, sign here, sign here. It was kind of that way with Ronald Reagan back in the days when he and Mikhail Gorbachev were in Reykjavik to sign an agreement. It was going to be a weapons agreement. They were both going to try to rein him in. And then they noticed something in the fine print that certainly the Gipper noticed about that he'd have to suspend his whole space initiative. Well, they just signed him, Mr. President. He saw that, was infuriated, stood up, walked out. The rest, of course, is history, because he did come back, and eventually they did sign a deal to former Reagan official Larry Pfeiffer, who remembers it all so well. You know, Larry, there is precedent to walking away from something even though the world is pressuring you to do something, but that was pretty unusual back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Neil. And, you know, brinksmanship makes for great stories and can make for great presidents, but I wouldn't necessarily make it my first course of action.
Right. This guy, at least you walk out before we get into that situation. But could you refresh my memory, Larry? I haven't been to the Reagan Library. This is a very prominent feature, and it's a beautiful feature, and it's going back to those days, that that Reagan saw this right away, and it almost seemed like that, you know, you're right there at the house closing, and yeah, it's not exactly what we want, but sign. And he refused to do that. Relive that for me.
Well, as I recall from that era, that was that definitely put a shock through the system. You had a lot of people who had worked assiduously to establish the deal that we thought met all the requirements of the president. But in the end, he saw something he didn't like, and so the system responds to the president when he decides he wants change.
There was one sort. I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish that thought.
No, I was just going. Fortunately, they were able to reach another deal, and we got the historic deals that we got.
I'm sorry for that. I heard another take. Oh, this guy doesn't read anything. He's not that bright. We can sneak something in there. But he noticed that, and it changed things. Let's fast forward to today. This president, ahead of the fact, more responding to some bellicose talk out of the North Koreans. What do you think? You don't know probably his temperament as well as you do Ronald Reagan's, I guess, but of reconvening, of what would it take to get these two back at the table? Now, I know in the case of Reykjavik, post-Reykjavik, it was an understanding where this whole space thing would be on the table, and it would be out there. What do you think this president's are?
Well, I think the beauty of the letter the president wrote is, you know, he gives Kim the opportunity to respond and to come back to the table. Kim also was not the individual making the bellicose statements. They were people that were working for him. So,
that's right.
So he was probably calculating on his side as well. So hopefully Kim will seize the opportunity to move forward. These are all like maybe more like poker games than like house closings, where
that's a far better analogy. You know, it's interesting though. I noticed that too in the president's letter. It was carefully crafted to say didn't like the language out of the North Korean regime, but went on to be very complimentary, or as complimentary as one could get in this veneer, about the North Korean leader. Ronald Reagan, even after walking away from Reykjavik after that, consistently praised Gorbachev as a man of peace and one who clearly wanted a better than Soviet Union than his predecessors. And so he left that open to be inviting to Gorbachev to let's give this another shot.
Well, and clearly the Kim regime and its predecessors are regimes that center around one individual. So stroking that ego as much as possible can hopefully reap benefits.
But, you know, you think about it, Kim is a nut. Say what you will of Gorbachev, he wasn't a nut. He wasn't crazy. And best as I could remember, he wasn't killing millions of his people and starving them. So there is a difference there. But, I mean, then how does the president go forward?
Absolutely. Well, I agree with you. You know, to try to mirror this with the Reagan-Gorbachev era would suggest that we have a Gorbachev on the other side, and I'm not certain we do. I think the president continues to hold firm and push the sanctions as hard as he can, keep the allies, Korea and Japan, you know, close. Work with China to try to maximize the pressure from China, And what I've cautioned people who've asked me all along is this is going to be a long road. This is one where we need to be patient. It's going to be a series of fits and starts, and right now we're having a fit. I imagine before too long we'll have another start.
I think you're right. I hope you're right. I'm Larry Pfeiffer. Very good seeing you. Thank you very, very much.
Hey, thank you much, Neil.